The galaxy was old, very old. Thousands of species had risen from their home worlds, built great empires, and spread across the stars like seeds in the wind. They had discovered faster than light travel, built weapons that could crack moons, and created civilizations that spanned millions of planets. And in all that time, in all those years of conquest and war and discovery, nobody cared about Earth. The planet sat on the edge of an unremarkable spiral arm, circling a yellow star that the galactic maps simply called Sol 7291, the Galactic Concord, the great alliance that kept records of every species in the known universe, had sent a probe to Earth 3,000 years ago. The probe had watched for 6 months, recorded its findings, and returned home. The report was short: primitive bipedal species. No space travel. No unified government. Currently in early industrial age. Threat level: 0. Recommended action: none. And that was it. Earth was forgotten. The great powers of the galaxy had more important things to worry about. The Vethrani Dominion controlled 200,000 star systems. Their ships were beautiful things of glass and light, and their warriors had conquered 100 species. The crystalline hegemony was even larger, a cold empire of silicon-based life forms who viewed organic species as inferior. And then there was the Corvith swarm, a nightmare of chitinous bodies and hive minds that consumed everything in their path. These three powers had been at war for longer than human civilization had existed. They fought over resources, over territory, over pride. Billions died in their battles. Entire species were wiped out, their worlds burned to ash, their histories erased. Nobody thought about the small, blue planet on the edge of nowhere. High Ambassador Dex Ilian of the Galactic Concord was one of the few who remembered that Earth existed. He was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species. His carapace had turned gray with age, and his 4 eyes had seen more horrors than most beings could imagine. He had watched the great wars consume the galaxy for 500 years, and he was tired. One evening, while reviewing old files in his office on the diplomatic station above Nexus Prime, he found the report on Earth again. He read it with something like sadness. "Such a young species," he said to himself. "They have no idea what waits for them out here." He was wrong, of course, but he would not learn that for many years. The Corvith swarm arrived in the Sol system on what humans would have called Tuesday. 300 hive ships emerged from fold space near Jupiter, their massive forms blocking out the distant sun. Supreme Hive Commander Zeus led them personally. He was ancient and cruel, a creature of pure hunger who had devoured a dozen civilizations. The swarm needed new feeding grounds. Their war with the Vethrani had depleted their resources, and they needed fresh biomass. The probe reports from 3,000 years ago had mentioned a planet rich with life, a planet called Earth. Zythos expected to find a primitive world full of easy prey. He expected screaming, chaos, and surrender. He expected to add another species to his collection of the consumed. He found silence. The hive ships approached Earth slowly, sensors scanning for life signs. They found the remains of orbital stations, empty and cold. They found colonies on the moon, abandoned. They found structures on Mars, covered in dust. But they found no humans. 7 billion life forms had lived on Earth according to the old records. Now there was nothing. The cities still stood, but they were empty. The roads still crossed the land, but no vehicles moved on them. The air was clean, the water was pure, and the planet was completely, utterly deserted. Zythos felt something he had not felt in 1,000 years: confusion. Where did they go? He asked his subordinates. A species cannot simply vanish. But the humans had done exactly that. Somehow, somewhere, they had disappeared without leaving a trace. The swarm searched for 3 months. They found evidence of rapid evacuation. They found underground facilities that had been stripped of all equipment. They found launch sites that had been used millions of times. But they found no humans, no bodies, no explanation. Finally, Xyardos ordered the swarm to leave. Earth was useless to them now. An empty world was not worth their time. As the hive ships departed the Sol system, Xyardos recorded his findings in the swarm's collective memory. The human species has either destroyed itself or fled to unknown space. Current location, unknown. Threat level, 0. Recommended action, forget them. And so the galaxy forgot about humanity once again. 200 years passed. The wars continued. The Vethrani fought the hegemony. The hegemony fought the swarm. The swarm fought everyone. Trillions died. Stars were extinguished. Entire regions of space became wastelands of debris and radiation. Ambassador. The Exilian watched it all from his station above Nexus Prime. He had tried to negotiate peace 1,000 times. He had failed 1,000 times. The great powers did not want peace. They wanted victory. They wanted dominance. They wanted everything. One night, as he stared out at the stars, the Exilian thought about Earth again. He wondered what had happened to the humans. Had they truly destroyed themselves? Had they fled into the void between galaxies? Or had something else happened, something that nobody had considered? He would never know, he thought. The humans were gone, and the galaxy had moved on without them. But far away, in a region of space that no probe had ever scanned, in a place that no map had ever charted, something was happening. Something was being built. Something was being planned. The humans had not destroyed themselves. They had not fled. They had done something far more intelligent, far more patient, far more terrifying. They had hidden. For 200 years, they had watched the galaxy from the shadows. They had studied every species, every weapon, every tactic. They had learned from the mistakes of others. They had built things that the great powers could not imagine. And now, finally, they were ready. In a massive shipyard, hidden in the darkness between stars. A young officer named Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of a vessel that was 12,000 kilometers long. She looked at the screens showing the status of the First Fleet. 100 ships, each one a masterpiece of human engineering. Each one carrying weapons that would make the galaxy tremble. She received a message from Earth Command. One word sent across the vastness of space. Go, Vasquez smiled. It was not a kind smile. All ships, she said calmly. Prepare for fold space jump. Destination, Nexus Prime. The engines began to hum. The stars began to blur. Humanity was coming home. The Battle of Nexus Prime was supposed to end everything. For 3,000 years, the great powers had fought each other across the galaxy. They had burned worlds, exterminated species, and spent resources that could have built paradise 100 times over. But now, finally, all of them had gathered in one place for the final confrontation. Nexus Prime was an ancient ringworld, a massive structure that circled a dying star. Nobody knew who had built it. The builders had disappeared long before any current species had achieved space travel. But the ringworld contained technology beyond imagination, and whoever controlled it would control the galaxy. The Vethrani Dominions sent their entire fleet. 200 billion warships of glass and light, each one crewed by warriors who had trained since birth for this moment. High Admiral Korvax led them from the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dawn. He was confident of victory. The Vethrani were the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Everyone knew this. The crystalline hegemony sent their forces as well. 150 billion geometric dreadnoughts, each one a perfect crystal structure powered by artificial singularities. The hegemony did not have admirals. They had a collective consciousness that controlled all their ships as one. They did not feel fear or doubt. They simply calculated the odds and acted accordingly. And then there was the Corvette swarm. Supreme Hive Commander Zeros had gathered every hive ship, every warrior drone, every bioweapon in the swarm's arsenal. 50 billion vessels of chitin and flesh, driven by a single hunger. Zeros was old now, ancient even by swarm standards. But he wanted to see this final battle. He wanted to consume the losers. Smaller powers had come too. The merchant guilds, hoping to profit from the chaos. The free colonies, hoping to survive. The Galactic Concord, hoping to negotiate peace even at this late hour. Ambassador Thexilian stood on the observation deck of his diplomatic cruiser, watching the fleets gather. 400 billion warships. More firepower than had ever been assembled in one place in galactic history. The sky was dark with vessels, and their engines made the stars themselves seem dim. "This is madness," he said to his aide, a young creature named Vex. "No matter who wins, trillions will die today." Vex looked at the fleets with wide, frightened eyes. "Can nothing stop this, Ambassador?" Thexilian shook his head slowly. "I have tried for 500 years to bring peace." "They do not want peace. They want blood. They want power. They want to prove that their way is the only way." He turned away from the window. He could not bear to watch what was about to happen. The battle began at noon, Galactic Standard Time. High Admiral Korvax gave the order, and the Vethrani fleet surged forward. Their weapons were beautiful and terrible, beams of pure light that could slice through armor like paper. They struck the hegemony's front lines, and 1,000 crystal ships shattered into dust. The hegemony responded instantly. Their weapons were different, cold, and precise. Gravity beams that crushed ships into balls of metal. Temporal disruptors that aged vessels 1,000,000 years in seconds. The Vethrani screamed as their beautiful ships crumbled around them. And then the swarm attacked everyone. Zydos did not care about alliances or strategy. He simply wanted to consume. His hive ships released billions of warrior drones, living missiles that attached to enemy vessels and ate through their hulls. Bioacids melted armor. Parasites invaded life support systems. The swarm did not fight like civilized species. They fed. The battle became chaos. Ships exploded by the millions. Debris fields formed so thick that navigation became impossible. Emergency signals filled every frequency, screaming for help that would never come. Escape pods were shot down by both sides. Surrender was not accepted. Thexilian watched the death count rise on his screens. 1 billion, 10 billion, 50 billion. Lives ending every second. Futures erased, families destroyed. He had seen war before, but nothing like this. This was not war. This was extinction. "Ambassador," Vex said suddenly, his voice shaking. "Something is happening. Our sensors are detecting an anomaly." "Another weapon?" Thexilian asked wearily. "What fresh horror have they invented now?" "No, sir. This is different. I don't know what this is." Thexilian moved to the sensor station and looked at the readings. His blood ran cold. Something was emerging from fold space. Something impossibly large. Something that should not exist. The fold space rupture was unlike anything in galactic records. It was stable, controlled, precisely calculated. And it was growing larger by the second. Across the battlefield, sensors on every ship began screaming warnings. The fighting slowed, then stopped. Warriors who had been trying to kill each other moments ago now stared at the same point in space. United by confusion and growing fear. High Admiral Korvax demanded answers from his bridge crew. "What is that? Identify it immediately." "We cannot, Admiral. It does not match any known vessel type. It is too large. Our sensors cannot measure it properly." The hegemony's collective consciousness ran calculations and found only errors. The data did not make sense. Nothing could be that big. Nothing could generate a fold space rupture that's stable. Supreme. Hive Commander Zythos felt something stir in his ancient memory. A cold feeling, like a forgotten nightmare. He had felt this before, long ago, above an empty blue planet. No, he whispered through the swarm's psychic link. It cannot be. The rupture stabilized. And then, slowly, something emerged. It was a ship. A human ship. And it was 12,000 kilometers long. The vessel was nothing like the elegant Vethrani cruisers or the geometric hegemony dreadnoughts. It was brutal, ugly, industrial. Dark metal scarred by weapons that no one recognized. Engines that burned with light that hurt to look at. Gunports that seemed to go on forever. Across its bow, letters were painted in a script that no translator could read. But the ship broadcast its name across every frequency. Every channel, every telepathic link in the system. UH Unconquered. First Fleet Terran Expeditionary Force. We returned. The galaxy fell totally silent. 400 billion warships hung motionless in space. Warriors forgot their enemies. Commanders forgot their orders. Every eye, every sensor, every consciousness in the system focused on the massive vessel that had appeared from nowhere. Behind the Unconquered, the fold space rupture expanded again. More ships emerged. Human ships. 100 of them, each one terrifying in its own way. Ambassador Dexilian stared at the fleet with all four of his eyes. His hearts were beating too fast. His mind was struggling to process what he was seeing. Humans, he breathed. The humans have returned. Vex looked at him with confusion. Humans, sir? I do not recognize that species. Nobody does, Dexilian said quietly. We forgot about them. We all forgot. He watched the human fleet take formation around the Unconquered, their weapons dark but ready. They did not fire. They did not threaten. They simply waited, patient and silent, watching the chaos they had interrupted. I do not think, Dexilian said slowly, that they have forgotten about us. On the bridge of the Unconquered, Captain Elena Vasquez surveyed the battlefield. 400 billion alien warships, locked in a dance of death. Exactly as intelligence had predicted. Signal all fleets, she said calmly. Open channel. Her communications officer nodded. Channel open, Captain. Broadcasting to all vessels in the system. Vasquez straightened her uniform and began to speak. Her voice was calm, cold, and carried the weight of 200 years of preparation. Attention all vessels. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Expeditionary Force. You will cease fire immediately. You will power down your weapons. You will await further instructions. She paused, letting her words sink in. Humanity has returned, and we have much to discuss. High Admiral Korvax had fought in 300 battles. He had faced enemies that could destroy stars. He had witnessed horrors that would break lesser minds. But as he stared at the human vessel on his screen, he felt something he had not felt since childhood. Fear. Impossible, he whispered. A ship that size cannot exist. The structural requirements alone would require materials that have not been invented. His science officer was trembling as she reported her findings. Admiral, we are detecting energy signatures from that vessel that exceed anything in our records. Their power generation is... I do not have numbers for this. Our scales did not go high enough. Korvax tried to process this information. The Vethrani were the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. Their technology had been refined over 10,000 years. How could a species that had been primitive 3,000 years ago build something that made Vethrani ships look like toys? The answer came from an unexpected source. A historical database entry that nobody had read in centuries. "Admiral," his communications officer said nervously, "I found a reference to this species. They are called humans. They were cataloged 3,000 years ago as a primitive civilization. Threat level was listed as 0. 0? Korvax laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Update that assessment immediately." Across the battlefield, the crystalline hegemony's collective consciousness was experiencing something close to panic. They processed data at speeds that organic beings could not comprehend. They calculated probabilities and outcomes for every possible scenario. But now, for the first time in their existence, their calculations returned only one result: insufficient data. They knew nothing about this species. They had no records of human weapons, human tactics, human psychology. The hegemony had conquered 1,000 civilizations by understanding them, predicting them, outthinking them. They could not outthink something they did not understand. The collective reached a decision. They would test these newcomers. They would fire one shot and analyze the response. A single hegemony dreadnought powered its main weapon, a gravity beam capable of crushing a small moon. The beam lanced across space, aimed directly at the unconquered's hull. Captain Vasquez watched the incoming attack on her tactical display. She did not flinch. She did not give any orders. She simply waited. The gravity beam struck the unconquered shields. Nothing happened. The shields did not flicker. They did not strain. They simply absorbed the attack like a lake absorbing a single drop of rain. The hegemony dreadnought fired again, increasing power. Still nothing. The ship increased to maximum output, burning out its own weapon systems in the process. The unconquered hung motionless in space, completely unharmed. Vasquez allowed herself a small smile. "Send a message to that vessel," she said. 2 words, "Our turn." The unconquered secondary batteries fired a single shot. The beam was something the galaxy had never seen, a directed singularity contained in a magnetic field. It crossed the distance between ships in less than a heartbeat and struck the hegemony. Dreadnought shields. The dreadnought collapsed inward, crushed into a ball of crystal no larger than a human fist. Then it was gone, pulled into a miniature black hole that lasted exactly 0.3 seconds before evaporating. One ship. One shot. No debris. No survivors. The hegemony collective processed this information in absolute silence. Their calculations now returned a new result: retreat. But it was too late for that. Supreme Hive Commander Zythos had recognized the truth before anyone else. His ancient mind had connected the pieces. The empty planet, the abandoned colonies, the 200 years of silence. The humans had not died. They had not fled. They had been preparing for this moment. "All swarm vessels," he ordered through the psychic link. "Full retreat. Emergency fold space jump. Now." His subordinates hesitated. The swarm did not retreat. The swarm consumed. Retreat was against their very nature. "Obey!" Zythos screamed across the collective consciousness. "You do not understand what we face. I have seen this species before. I dismissed them as prey. I was wrong. We were all wrong. They are not prey. They are predators." The swarm began to move, their hive ships turning away from the battle, their fold space drive spinning up. But Vasquez had anticipated this too. "Deploy gravity anchors," she ordered calmly. "No one leaves until we are finished." The human fleet released devices that no one in the galaxy had seen before. They scattered across the battlefield, small spheres that pulsed with strange light. Then they activated, and every fold space drive in the system went dead. The physics should have been impossible. Fold space travel required manipulating the fabric of reality itself. Blocking it should have required similar power spread across thousands of ships. The humans had done it with 100 small devices. Zythos felt his escape route close. He was trapped. The greatest predator in the galaxy was trapped by a species he had dismissed as irrelevant. How? He asked himself. How did they do this? How did they advance so far so fast? The answer was simple, though he would never understand it. Humanity had done what no other species in galactic history had done. They had learned from others without becoming like them. For 200 years, human scientists had studied every piece of alien technology they could find. They had watched battles from the shadows, analyzing weapons and defenses. They had intercepted communications, decoded languages, mapped the strengths and weaknesses of every major power, and then they had built something new. Not copies of alien technology, not improvements on existing designs. Something completely different. Something that approached the problems of war and physics from angles that alien minds had never considered. The human brain was unique in the galaxy. It was not the most logical. It was not the most powerful, but it was the most creative. It could make connections that other species could not see. It could imagine solutions that other species could not conceive. The galaxy had built better versions of the same weapons for 10,000 years. Humanity had built different weapons in 200. On the bridge of the Unconquered, Lieutenant Commander David Chun reported to Captain Vasquez. All gravity anchors deployed and active, Captain. No vessel in this system can enter fold space. Enemy weapon status? The Vethrani and Hegemony fleets have powered down their weapons as ordered. The swarm is attempting to resist, but their ships are not designed for conventional space combat. They rely on fold space attacks. Vasquez nodded. And the smaller powers? The neutrals? The Galactic Concord diplomatic vessels are broadcasting surrender signals. The Merchant Guild ships are trying to hide behind debris fields. The Free Colony vessels are just sitting there, watching. Good. Vasquez stood from her command chair and walked to the main view screen. 400 billion alien ships spread out before her, helpless and confused. This was the moment humanity had waited for. Open a channel to all vessels, she said. It is time for them to understand. The channel opened and Vasquez began to speak. Her words reached every ship, every station, every being in the system. 200 years ago, your swarm came to our home world. They expected to find easy prey. They found an empty planet. Do you know why Earth was empty? Because we knew you were coming. We had intercepted your communications. We had decoded your language. We knew exactly when you would arrive and exactly what you intended to do. She paused, letting her words sink in. We could have fought you then. We had weapons that could have destroyed your hive ships. But we were not ready. Not for you, and not for the rest of the galaxy. So we left. We hid. We waited. Zythos listened through the swarm's collective consciousness. Every word confirmed his worst fears. For 200 years, we watched your wars. We studied your weapons. We learned your weaknesses. The Vethrani rely on speed and coordination. The Hegemony relies on calculation and prediction. The swarm relies on numbers and fear. All of you rely on fold space travel to escape when battles turn against you. Vasquez gestured at the tactical display showing the gravity anchors. You cannot escape now. You cannot predict us. You cannot outrun us. You cannot overwhelm us with numbers. Every advantage you have built over 10,000 years of warfare is gone. She let the silence stretch for a long moment. We did not come here to destroy you. We came here to give you a choice. The wars end today. All of them. You will release your slaves. You will return conquered territories. You will stop the killing. Her eyes hardened. Or we will stop it for you. High Admiral Korvax found his voice first. You cannot dictate terms to the Dominion. We are the greatest power in the galaxy. One fleet, no matter how advanced, cannot. The Unconquered's tertiary batteries fired. A single shot struck Korvax's flagship, the Eternal Dawn. The ship did not explode. Its weapons simply stopped working. Its shields went down. Its engines went dead. Korvax stood on a powerless bridge, surrounded by dark screens and silent crew members. His ship was intact but completely helpless. "I can do this to every ship in your fleet," Vasquez said calmly. "I can do it in minutes. I can leave you drifting in space with no power, no weapons, no hope, and simply wait for your life support to fail. Is that what you want? Is your pride worth the lives of your entire species?" The silence that followed was the most absolute silence the galaxy had ever known. The silence lasted for exactly 47 seconds. Then the swarm attacked. Supreme Hive Commander Zylos made his decision through pure instinct. He had survived for thousands of years by being aggressive, by striking first, by never showing weakness. Surrender was not in his nature. It could never be in his nature. "All swarm vessels," he screamed across the collective consciousness. "Attack, consume, destroy." 50 billion Hive ships surged forward. They could not enter fold space, but they still had conventional engines. They still had bioweapons. They still had the endless hunger that had consumed 100 civilizations, warrior drones launched by the billions. Living missiles, each one carrying acid and parasites in teeth. They filled the space between the swarm fleet and the human ships like a living cloud. In any previous battle, this would have been the end. No defense could stop so many attackers. Captain Vasquez watched the swarm approach. Her face showed no fear, no concern, not even interest. She had expected this. "Activate Point Defense Network," she said calmly. All ships. The human fleet came alive. Weapons that had been dark now blazed with light. But these were not the terrible weapons that had destroyed the hegemony dreadnought. These were smaller, faster, designed for a different purpose. The point defense system worked on principles that alien scientists would study for centuries and never fully understand. It tracked every incoming threat simultaneously, not through sensors, but through probability calculations that predicted where threats would be before they arrived. It fired beams of focused energy that moved faster than light itself, bending space to reach their targets. The warrior drones died by the billions. They did not even get close to the human ships. The space between the fleets became a wall of fire and death, but all of it was on the swarm side. Zylos watched his forces melt away. Warrior drones that had taken years to grow were destroyed in milliseconds. Bioweapons that had conquered worlds never reached their targets. The endless hunger of the swarm met something it could not consume. "More," he ordered. "Send more?" They must run out of ammunition. They must tire. They must have limits. The swarm sent everything they had. Every drone, every biomissile, every living weapon in their arsenal. The attack continued for 3 minutes, the largest assault in galactic history. It failed completely. The human point defense systems did not slow down. They did not run out of power. They simply kept firing, kept destroying, kept defending. When the last warrior drone died, the swarm had lost 90% of its attack capability. Their hive ships drifted helplessly, empty of weapons, empty of defenders, empty of hope. Zylos felt something break inside his ancient mind. He had been the supreme predator for thousands of years. He had consumed civilizations. He had been feared by every species in the galaxy. Now, he felt what his prey had always felt: terror, despair. The knowledge that death was coming, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "You should have listened," Vasquez said over the open channel. "Now I have to make an example." The Unconquered's main weapon powered up. The ship's energy reading spiked so high that every sensor in the system overloaded and had to reset. The weapon itself was invisible to normal eyes, but those with the right equipment could see space itself, bending around the barrel. The weapon fired once. The beam struck the center of the swarm fleet and kept going. It passed through ships without stopping, and every ship it touched simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not exploded. Erased from reality itself, broken down into particles so small they had no meaning. The beam traveled for exactly 10 kilometers before Vasquez ordered it stopped. In that distance, it had destroyed 18,000 hive ships. 18,000 vessels, each one home to millions of swarm creatures. Gone in less than a second. The remaining swarm ships went silent. The collective consciousness that connected them all simply stopped. For the first time in their history, the swarm had nothing to say. Zythos floated on the bridge of his flagship, his ancient body trembling. He had just witnessed the death of millions of his children. He had just witnessed power beyond anything he had imagined. Do you understand now? Vasquez asked. Do any of you understand? We have weapons you cannot defend against. We have technology you cannot copy. We have been watching you destroy each other for 200 years. And we have been building our response. She stood in the center of her bridge, surrounded by officers who showed no fear, no doubt. Only quiet confidence. The Vani Dominion has enslaved 400 species. The crystalline hegemony has exterminated 62 races that they considered inferior. The Corvus swarm has consumed more civilizations than anyone can count. You have turned this galaxy into a graveyard. Her voice hardened. That ends today. High Admiral Korvax, still trapped on his powerless ship, found his voice. And who are you to judge us? You hide for 200 years, then appear with weapons of destruction and demand surrender? You are no better than we are. You're right, Vasquez said. We're not better. We're human. We have committed our own atrocities. We have fought our own wars. We have done terrible things to each other. The difference is that we learned. We looked at our history and we felt shame. We decided to be better. She pointed at the tactical display showing the debris from the swarm attack. We could have destroyed all of you in the first 10 seconds. We have the power. We have the weapons. We could kill every alien in this system, and there is nothing any of you could do to stop us. But we didn't. We showed restraint. We gave you a choice. She let the words hang in the air. The swarm chose wrong. They attacked, and they paid the price. Now the rest of you have to decide. Will you choose war? Will you force us to use our full power? Or will you choose something different? The crystalline hegemony's collective consciousness had been running calculations throughout the battle. They had analyzed every human weapon, every tactic, every movement. Their conclusions were clear. We cannot win this fight, the collective announced through their communication systems. Human technology is between 300 and 500 years ahead of our own. Their weapons operate on physical principles we do not understand. Their defenses are impenetrable to our attacks. Resistance is illogical. Korvax slammed his fist against his dead console. The hegemony surrenders? Cowards. The Dominion will never bow to these primitives. Admiral Korvax, Vasquez said patiently, your ship is dead. Your fleet is surrounded by gravity anchors. You cannot fight. You cannot run. The only choice you have is how you want to be remembered. She leaned forward slightly. You can be remembered as the admiral who fought to the last ship, who got his entire species killed because he was too proud to admit he had lost. Or you can be remembered as the admiral who recognized a new reality and helped his people adapt to it. You asked me to betray everything I believe in. I'm asking you to believe in something new. We're not here to conquer you. We're not here to enslave you. We're here to end the wars. We're here to free the species you've enslaved. We're here to stop the killing." Vasquez walked to the view screen and looked out at the gathered fleets. Vethrani, Hegemony, Swarm, and a dozen smaller powers. All of them watching. All of them waiting. The galaxy has been at war for 10,000 years. Your children grow up learning to kill. Your economies run on conquest. Your cultures celebrate destruction. We're offering you something different." She turned back to face the camera. Peace. Actual peace. Not the temporary pauses between wars. Not the treaties that get broken the moment one side feels strong enough. Real, lasting peace, enforced by a power that no one can challenge. "And if we refuse?" Korvax asked bitterly. Vasquez did not answer with words. She simply gestured at the empty space where 18,000 swarm ships had been docked. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then, one by one, the alien fleets began powering down their remaining weapons. The Hegemony went first, their geometric dreadnoughts going dark and cold. Then the smaller powers, the merchants and the free colonies and the neutral observers. Then, finally, the remaining swarm ships, their hive minds broken and leaderless. Korvax was the last. He stood on his dark bridge, surrounded by his helpless crew, and made the hardest decision of his life. "All Vethrani vessels," he said quietly. "Stand down. The war is over." Captain Vasquez allowed herself a moment of relief. The hardest part was done. The killing could stop. "All ships, this is the Unconquered," she announced. "Begin recovery operations. Any vessel in distress is to be assisted regardless of species. Medical teams, prepare for mass casualties. We have a lot of work to do." She looked at her crew, at the officers who had trained for this moment their entire lives. "Today, we changed the galaxy. Let's make sure we changed it for the better." The 10-minute war was over. The real work was just beginning. Ambassador Dexilian had served the Galactic Concord for 500 years. He had met with warlords and emperors, negotiated treaties and surrenders, witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. He thought he understood the galaxy. He understood nothing. The shuttle that carried him to the Unconquered was tiny compared to the massive human vessel. As it approached the docking bay, Dexilian pressed his face against the window like a child seeing space for the first time. The ship was even more impressive up close. The hull was covered in patterns that might have been writing, or might have been decoration, or might have been something else entirely. The metal seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The docking bay alone was larger than most space stations. Human shuttles and vehicles moved in organized patterns, directed by controllers that Dexilian could not see. Everything moved with precision, with purpose, with an efficiency that made Vethrani operations look chaotic. When the shuttle landed, a human officer was waiting. She was young by Dexilian's standards, with dark hair and a uniform that displayed no decorations or rank insignia that he could recognize. "Ambassador Dexilian," she said. "I'm Lieutenant Chen. Captain Vasquez is expecting you." Dexilian followed her through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. He saw humans everywhere, working at stations, walking purposefully, talking quietly with each other. None of them showed fear or tension. They moved like people who knew exactly what they were doing and why. "Your ship is remarkable," Dexilian said carefully. "I have never seen technology like this." Lieutenant Chun smiled slightly. "We had good teachers. You, actually. All of you. Us? We watched your wars for 200 years. We saw what worked and what didn't. We learned from your mistakes without having to make them ourselves." She paused at a large door. "The captain is inside." The door opened, and Dexilian entered a room that surprised him. He had expected a military command center, cold and functional. Instead, he found something almost comfortable. Large windows showed the debris field outside. There were chairs of different sizes, clearly designed for different species. In the center was a small table with 2 cups on it. Captain Vasquez stood by the window, looking out at the remains of 400 billion warships. She was smaller than Nexilian had expected. Humans were small compared to most galactic species, but something about her presence made the room feel smaller than it was. "Ambassador," she said, turning to face him. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit. I made coffee. It's a human drink. I think you might like it." Nexilian sat carefully in a chair that adjusted to fit his body. He picked up the cup and smelled the dark liquid inside. It had a strange, bitter scent that was not entirely unpleasant. "You must have many questions," Vasquez said, sitting across from him. "Only one, really," Nexilian replied. "Why? You have power beyond imagination. You could conquer the entire galaxy. You can enslave us all, just as we have enslaved others. Why show mercy?" Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, softer, more human, if Nexilian understood the concept correctly. "Do you know what we found when we started studying the galaxy, Ambassador? We found a cycle. Species rise, they develop technology, they reach the stars, and then they start fighting. Always fighting. For resources, for territory, for pride. They fight until they destroy themselves or until someone stronger destroys them." She gestured at the window. "The Vethrani have been fighting for 10,000 years. The Hegemony, even longer. The Swarm doesn't remember a time before war. This is all any of you know. Violence, conquest, domination. It's built into your cultures, your economies, your very identities." She took a sip of her coffee. "Humans were the same. We fought each other for thousands of years. We nearly destroyed ourselves more than once. But something changed. We looked at our history, at all the death and destruction we had caused, and we asked ourselves if there was another way." "And was there?" Nexilian asked. "Yes, but it was hard. It took generations. We had to change everything about how we thought about ourselves and each other. We had to accept that victory over others wasn't the same as success. We had to learn that peace wasn't weakness." She looked at him directly, and Nexilian saw something in her eyes that he had never seen in a warrior before. It was not pride or aggression or hunger for power. It was something he did not have a word for. "We spent 200 years in the dark," Vasquez continued. "We could have built an empire during that time. We had the technology. We had the numbers. We could have conquered half the galaxy before anyone knew we existed. But we chose not to. We chose to wait until we were strong enough to end the wars without becoming part of them. You could have ended them by winning them," Nexilian said. "By becoming the new dominant power. Yes, and then what? We rule the galaxy for 1,000 years, until someone stronger comes along and destroys us. We become the new oppressors, the new slavers, the new monsters?" Vasquez shook her head. "We've seen how that story ends. It ends badly for everyone." She stood and walked to the window. "Do you know what Earth looks like now, Ambassador? We rebuilt it. Not as a military base or an industrial center, but as a home. A place where children can grow up without fear of orbital bombardment. A place where people can live their lives in peace." She turned back to him. "That's what we want for the galaxy. Not conquest. Not domination. Just peace. A chance for every species to build something beautiful, without worrying about it being destroyed." Nexilian was silent for a long time. He had negotiated with countless leaders over his long life. He had learned to recognize lies, deception, hidden agendas. He saw none of that in Vasquez. "And if we refuse?" he asked finally. "If we return to our old ways the moment your fleet leaves?" "We won't leave," Vasquez said simply. We'll station ships in every major system. We'll monitor every fleet, every weapon, every threat. And if anyone starts a war, we'll end it. Quickly and decisively. You would be tyrants, forcing your peace on us through strength. Yes, Vasquez admitted. For now, that's exactly what we'll be. We'll use our power to prevent violence. We'll use our technology to rebuild what's been destroyed. We'll use our influence to free the enslaved and protect the weak. She smiled, but it was a sad smile. We're not perfect, Ambassador. We're not gods. We'll make mistakes. We'll have to make hard choices. Some species will hate us for taking away their power. Some will call us oppressors for stopping their conquests. But we accept that. We accept being the ones who enforce the peace, because someone has to do it. And what do you want from us? From the Concord? We want you to help us. You have 500 years of diplomatic experience. You know these species, their cultures, their histories. You know how they think and what they value. We need that knowledge to build something better. Daxilian looked down at his cup of coffee. He had not tasted it yet. He raised it to his lips and drank. It was bitter, strong, and strangely comforting. I have spent 500 years watching the galaxy destroy itself, he said slowly. I have tried to stop it. I have failed over and over again. I had given up hope. He looked up at Vasquez. You are offering me hope, Captain. Real hope for the first time in centuries. I do not know if your peace will last. I do not know if the galaxy can truly change. But I am willing to try. Vasquez extended her hand. Daxilian had learned about this human gesture. It was a sign of agreement, of partnership. He reached out with his own manipulator limb and grasped her hand. Welcome to the new galaxy, Ambassador, Vasquez said outside the window. Recovery operations continued. Human medical ships moved among the debris, rescuing survivors regardless of species. Engineering vessels began collecting wreckage that might pose navigation hazards. Communication ships broadcast messages of reassurance to frightened populations on 1,000 worlds. The wars were over. The killing had stopped. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy was at peace. It would not be easy. There would be resistance, rebellions, species who refused to accept the new order. There would be hard choices and painful compromises. The work of building a peaceful galaxy would take generations. But for the first time in galactic history, there was a chance. A real chance for something better. As Daxilian returned to his shuttle, he looked back at the unconquered one last time. The massive ship hung in space like a promise, a threat, and a hope all at once. The galaxy had known many silences over the ages. The silence of fear when the swarm approached. The silence of death after a battle. The silence of extinction when a species ended. But now there was a new silence spreading across the stars. The silence of worlds without war. The silence of children who would never know bombardment. The silence of species who could finally look up at the night sky without terror. The humans called it peace. And slowly, carefully, with hope and fear in equal measure, the galaxy began to call it home.